Well, the background of my going into Africa is fairly interesting. I was teaching at the time at Temple University, which itself is another story. The way I got to Temple was basically a great achievement by Rael. But as I say, that's another story. But then eventually what happened at Temple, which at the time was really a pretty awful place, where they demanded that we should teach additional courses without getting additional pay, or very little additional pay, and courses in topics which are not ours, really. So, for example, I was told that I should teach a summer course in English and maybe another summer course in history. And I wrote a note to the president at Temple saying that's not the right thing to do for a university, because in a university it's not a high school or so-called high school in this country, but a university is something else, where you have experts in their field doing either research or research and teaching, but not teaching subjects about which they haven't got much to know. Well, this didn't go over too well, and so I received a letter saying that they don't need me anymore. Well, okay, that was pretty bad. But at the same time, I saw an ad or a note in somewhere that the City College of New York looks for somebody who can teach Russian geography. And so I said, well, I better tell them. I went there, and I was interviewed by the economics department at the city, who said, yes, they need somebody in Russian, because that becomes a very big topic these days. So I said, well, I can teach something about Russia, but I'm not an expert on Russian geography. Well, maybe. And they said, well, what can you teach? So I said, well, I teach something else, like geography. I'm interested in this geography of Africa and so on. So then they went off and they consulted each other. And it is like they came back and said, yeah, Africa is just as good as Russia. I just opened my mouth and I didn't quite understand. They said, you're hired if you want to go teach Africa. Well, that was wonderful. In fact, I went back to Philadelphia, where we still lived then, and I told the department that, yeah, well, it's too bad I'm being fired, but I just got a job at City College, which had a big reputation among them, and all those faculty members said, what, really? That's terrific. And okay, so this is, we have to tell that idiot president of ours that he lost a great expert in Russian geography. And so, okay, we went home. That was wonderful. And of course we had these brilliant two twins also. And we had to get rid of our apartment and to go to New York, for which I had a car, was called Jezebel, was a little Chevy station wagon, and in the end, we traded it off for some pictures with a painter who lived across the street from us, named Greenberg, I think it was his name. Very nice people. The pictures were, I don't know, that great, but neither was the car, so it wasn't. Anyway, so this is how we got to New York, and from then on, I said, I have to start teaching, but honestly, I have also appealed to the Guggenheim Foundation, and if I get it, could I postpone starting teaching at City? Would you be willing to give me a thing? If I don't get it, it's all right. I just start teaching right away. They said they had another one of their powwows, and they said, that's terrific. We'll have somebody from the Guggenheim Foundation. I said, of course you can go. We'll hold the position. That's how I got to Africa.
Okay.
Of course, we got there. And I was interested, of course, at the time, actually, in history and distribution of African cattle. And that was okay, that was fine. I mean, the Guggenheim said, yes, okay, that sounds very interesting. And so anyway, we then got off to Rhodesia. That was at the time, that was still Rhodesia. It was, in fact, it was becoming the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, which consisted of Southern Rhodesia, Northern Rhodesia, and Nyasaland combined into a federation, one federation, the head of which was the prime minister of the federation, and I forgot his name now, but it comes back to me. He was a Jewish person from Salisbury. Salisbury was the capital of Southern Rhodesia, which became the capital of the federation. And he was, as I say, he was actually born there, and was very proud of becoming the head. He said, here's a person, I'm neither English, there's not a drop of English blood in my veins, and I'm born here, and he was the head of the railroad of Southern Rhodesia, and so he became the head, and of course ultimately the federation collapsed. As I said, today it doesn't exist anymore. But so we got there, we got to Salisbury. We had to look for an apartment, and we found one owned by a Swiss settler in Southern Rhodesia from Switzerland. His name I remember, Lukinbull, and his Lukinbull and his wife, and they were quite willing to let me, to rent this apartment as permanent, as a base we used. And then, well, in the apartment we had to have a help. One of the helpers was a young native African by the name of White, who was very black. Now, White, his main task was in the morning to wake me up and come, and Rael too, and come into the bedroom with tea for both. But that was basically it. And we paid him, but he didn't want to be paid in paper money. It had to be coin. So I got enough coin to pay him. And the other person that was hired was Elizabeth Muzorewa. Elizabeth Muzorewa, a wonderful woman, young girl really, who took care of the kids while we were gone. Elizabeth she was a daughter of an African, a Rhodesian priest, actually Bishop Muzorewa, who had been famous with his pro-Jewish Christianity, so, and had gone to Jerusalem to study Hebrew and biblical texts, for which he was later persecuted. After a while, when Rhodesia became independent under that disastrous president, which is still around. What's his name?
Mugabe.
Which?
Mugabe. Mugabe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Mugabe. That's right. Who then arrested Musareva for having gone to this Jewish country, and so that was some years after us. Well, it's just typical how young. Anyway, here we were, and after a week or two, we both started out. Elizabeth kept the kids. We went north to a place which was pretty much in the cattle country of southern Rhodesia, and the name of the place was Motoko. It was a famous local, what should I say, provincial headquarters, sort of something, in Motoko. Now, in Motoko, we found a place, at least for a few days, at an inn in Motoko, which was run by Mr. Kaplan. Mr. Kaplan was an unusual person. He and his wife had come there years before, quite wild, having come from South Africa northward to make their life there, or to gain some income and so on. And that was, of course, the story of his trip. I must have told you that they went with a cattle wagon and their stuff, and during the trip north, they went in the thunderstorm. Must have been bad winter time, or anyway, he was hit by lightning.
Oh.
Was hit by lightning and survived, which wasn't easy to do. It's not even easy to do these days.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but a section of his skull was missing.
Oh my God.
Whoever took it out, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but he was perfectly normal.
Yeah.
It was a bone that was. And so they went to, and they started this restaurant in Motoko, which was visited mainly by miners who were mining in South Africa, and on their own, but they wanted to occasionally to have a real decent meal, and by what do you call it, the local police officers of the Rhodesian police, especially the white police officers. They come in, and everybody liked Kaplan himself. I forgot his first name, but he was known as Kaplan, and he was extraordinarily good, in good relations with the surrounding black population, which were mainly a group called the Shona. And they loved him so much, and he liked them, that everybody, every newborn child, every newborn boy was named Kaplan.
Right.
So that southern Rhodesia area were running around a lot of native African black children, and the parents called them, Kaplan, come home, it's time, Kaplan this, Kaplan that. It's most unusual event. And of course the local police also was very in very good relations with him. In fact, some of them did buy special meals to give to the native police under their control and so on. My experience of Kaplan was his food was very, very good under the circumstances. Very good. And he had a menu was specially printed. Now, the menu had everything on it. In other words, what do you call it? Appetizers. Kind of Kipling's fish of this, fish of that, fish of that. Then the main menu was vegetables, a lot of vegetables, and then fried meat, boiled meat, all kinds, and then afterwards desserts, about 5 different cakes and this and that. And I am not familiar with that kind of menus that he had. And I said, my God, I started ordering from the top to the bottom. And I ate it. I ate it. I think my plan to start studying cattle in those areas was postponed for a few days. Rael said, you don't have to eat all this, you just have to select what you... Well, I said, how do you know that he'll be upset? Well, anyway, he had very good things. Now, he was very, very Jewish, and he had Jewish calendar, so he knew what the holidays were. In fact, a lot of the blacks in that area knew what the Jewish holidays were when Kaplan was closed. Mm-hmm. And of course, the local Christians also knew the locals also. But his 2 children, I try to remember, he sent off his sons down to South Africa to go to Jewish education, mm-hmm. and then to the law school. They became fairly well-known lawyers down there, and what happened to him after we left, I don't think much good could have happened when Mugabe's bunch, they were so-called Ndebele, a different group, not Shona, and basically at war with the Shona.
Oh, really? Wow.
The Shona also had their own problems. They were all, they were very friendly to us and to Kaplan and all that, but they also were aggressively anti-Ndebele and so on. And from both groups came forth some of the leaders of the anti-white, anti-colonialist, anti-English group. Okay, so then we went, I tried to map the land borders of different subgroups and to write down what kind of cattle they had as far as I could identify them. And some I wasn't so clear, but I wrote down what I considered their marks, special marks, long-headed, short-headed, and so on. And I had some very good relations with a local agricultural officer, white, by the Department of Agriculture of Rhodesia, who tried to help the native cattle keepers to improve their stock. Okay. Because it had occurred to them, they're very slow, had occurred to the government of Rhodesia, the English native semi, that they have an export there. They should export
Cattle.
meat,
Oh, meat.
and they should export hides and so on and so on, which makes a lot of sense, but for which they had, of course, to develop. They felt they had to develop a better variety, and they had to establish what do you call it? Cold storage facilities. It was an interesting period. That officer, that agricultural head, who was supposed to help in the selection of varieties and to improve them, he was a white English, South African born, I guess, but very pro-native. In fact, he felt that the plot to export cattle and so on was basically something to enrich the white population. That's partly his own experience. He didn't consider him that important, and so. But he was a very nice person, and we had very good relations with him, and it was very important getting in and getting around there, and getting entry to some of the maneuvers they had. Like, for example, cattle had to be chosen, had to be what do you call it?
Cleaned?
Cleaned. Had to be
insect.
All those bugs that sit on them and so on. And they had to be driven into
enclosure.
Narrow. What do you call it? Like fence on both sides, gates on the end and front. And while they were in, flooded with some insecticide water.
Right.
That was quite an interesting thing, because a lot of the natives didn't like that. Others said, okay. So anyway, this was an interesting thing, and ultimately, that period made me write a couple of articles, not just on cattle, but also on the nature of their settlements, of the native settlements, villages, and how they kind of. Anyway, so that was basically what we did, and then we got back to after a number of these trips. Always we got back to Salisbury.
You had a Land Rover,
which is now Harare.
Yeah, but you had a Land Rover, right? That always
what?
broke. You had a Land Rover.
I don't know. So can you stop it?
Yeah. Hold on. Let's see.
Where am I?
Yeah, I got you. Okay. All right.
Well, back in Salisbury, we had also some acquaintances, very good acquaintances. One was the Chulis. Now, Mrs. Chuli was a relative of, what was his name? Rosen? It's a matter of age. I forgot names.
Yeah.
And these are important names. That people we were very good, because her brother was. They had escaped from Germany and had a big problems getting into finding a place. Eventually, they got to South Africa. The husband and his father and he, and then. Ended up in northern Rhodesia, the Chudis. Now, Mr. Chudi had survived World War as a concentration camps, and he was a Polish Jew and so on, had come to Rhodesia after the war and established a very successful factory producing terrazzo, which is a kind of artificial marble type thing for floor sinks. And one of the good relations was, well, we got around very much with them. I met them frequently, And also, of course, other people like the Helfans, but I'll have to talk about this. But at some point, late in our stay, we decided to have a trip. Well, I had, of course, bought a Land Rover, a used Land Rover when we came there. And that's the way we drove. We got around. Now, Judy and Mrs. Judy I and Rael and Judy's had a native friend to come along as for languages and so on. He was actually a Muslim, a native, and so he decided to make this trip. And the trip was to take us north and all areas which they hadn't seen, which we hadn't seen, and to take us to the Congo, which was at the edge of becoming free.
Okay.
Being free meaning getting rid of the Belgian overlords.
Yeah.
The Belgians were willing to leave, and so of course there was a big. I saw Slobumba. I forgot who who was the leader of the Freedom Party, trained in Russia. And so there only was a kind of turmoil. Mm-hmm. But on the whole trip, we got through the southern part of the Congo, going north. That area was known as Katanga, which was very wealthy because of its copper mine. Copper extended from there into northern Rhodesia, so a lot of copper. But we learned how, well, the roads were not that bad around Elizabethville, which was the southernmost town. The names have changed, of course. Yeah. And in Elizabethville, of course, what I had known about it was had a large Jewish community, which was closely related to those in Salisbury. They came from Rhodes. They were not also from Rhodes, island of Rhodes. Right. But they were already on the edge of leaving. A lot of them left to their relatives in the south or South Africa or across the sea to Australia as soon as they could. Anyway, we drove there, but beyond the towns, the roads were terrible. Just terrible. And according to the Belgian system, local towns, local villages had to maintain the road of which they did as long as there was a strong Belgian thing. They did more or less. Well, we did there, but the one thing that was not so great was my Land Rover. First of all, I had bought it, I didn't have intention to keep it forever. Anyway, it was second hand, maybe third hand by then. Yeah. We had new tires on and so on, and we had to have enough gas for trips, because where do you get? So Judy, who is very imaginative, he put the gas tank on top of the front of the car, over the driver's head. Okay. And from there, a hose went down into the other gas tank, and it could be turned off. Right. So that was filled with gas. And then, so here we went, and it went very badly. Yeah. Fortunately, most of the time we had gas, and this was not a major problem. And then we came up there northward. We got to Bukavu, a beautiful town. It's more in the heights, in the high passing Lake Tanganyika and so on. It was really a European resort, beautifully done, beautiful houses. The area also had a large production of major banana plantations and so on. That was really very, very nice. And then we went further north. I'll tell you, we had a meeting with pygmies. I still have some of their bow and arrows and spears in the garage here, which we had kept. We also got some local artwork, which we got rid of later when we came back. I didn't keep it. Maybe it was a mistake, but okay. So then, ultimately, getting through Rwanda, Burundi, and we wanted to cross back eastward to Uganda and Tanganyika, and then south.
Mm-hmm.
Now, crossing over, we had to cross the lake, and there was supposed to be a ferry. It didn't exist.
Oh, really?
It didn't exist there. At some point, something like a floating something showed up with a lot of, I would say, Uganda natives who pulled the car over and more or less got us across.
Okay.
And then disappeared.
Yeah.
That, of course, was one of the places where I decided revenge was important. And as we drove off into the direction of Kampala, we came to a crossroad with a sign pointing to Kampala, to Rwanda, this and that. I switched it around.
Oh.
There was no traffic in that area,
Yeah.
and if there was traffic, they knew anyway where it was.
Yeah.
And after I switched it around, a big herd of wildebeest showed up.
Yeah.
I ran back to the car. I thought, I hope they go the other way. But we managed to get off. We got off as far as Kampala, capital. And there the car broke down.
Oh.
Finally, it was. I think it was broke down.
Yeah.
There was a garage.
Yeah.
And the garage was run by Indians. Now, Indians were very important in that area. During the British period, they had imported Indians, and the Indians ran the stores, clothing stores, shoe stores, grocery stores too, and schools, and of course technical, like a garage. But that was the year where the British were pulling out, and the blacks were taking over, were supposed to take over. Anyway, what could I do? I went to that garage and said, look, what can you see? Okay. And he examined that truck carefully, a local Indian owner, and he said, well, basically all you need is a new battery.
Yeah.
I said, fine, what can I do? I wasn't sure if I had that much money. I have no idea how much they were. But the truth is, said, okay, fine, so so he did that. He said, I said, when is it done? He said, a few hours. And so we wandered to town, and after I come back, and it's done, and I said, okay, it's running perfectly. How much is it? He said, it's for free.
Oh, yeah. Really?
It's free. I said, what do you mean it's for free? He said, it's for free. They're throwing us out.
Uh-huh.
And what's the point?
Yeah.
I mean, I have these. Why should they benefit from the batteries that I
see.
have? I'm giving them away. Anybody who wants it can have it.
Oh, okay.
So we argued with him. He said, you can have used money, use it. Where are you going? Are you going to England? He says, no.
Yeah.
They cancelled our British passport. I said, oh, that was like Palestine.
Yeah.
But they had the same thing. We used to have a British, it said British passport.
Yeah.
And then it said Palestine.
Right.
And they had a British passport, colonial,
Right.
and it said Uganda or whatever it
I
says.
see.
And so they were not admitted to England
Yeah.
after having been British subjects for that long.
Right.
So, where are you going? He says, well, we try to go back
Yeah.
to India, but they're not that enthusiastic either about ours as accepting us, but it'll be okay.
Yeah.
That was sort of sorry studies. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, then slowing down, and at this point, the Chudis wanted to go to the coast, and Indian Ocean coast, and then they would take, I think it was where they were going, Mombasa, I think, and then there's a train.
Okay.
They would take the train down south,
Right.
and we would just continue. And okay, we drove part of the way. We had to stay overnight somewhere in the open field, and during the night there was a lot of howling of lions roaring around there. And I thought, well, we knew that lions sometimes like to eat humans,
Right.
and I thought, I hope my blanket is strong.
What? What is
The
strong?
blanket that I slept on would be strong enough. Anyway, in the morning we left. Nothing had happened, but our Muslim black accompaniment, I couldn't find him. He had climbed up on a tree when he heard that howling. Eventually he come down. We drove off then south while they went to the coast, to Mombasa, which I suppose we could have gone to. I mean, it would have been interesting to see, but I just was tired of it.
Yeah.
I was worried about the car that we have. I wanted to go home. And we eventually managed to return home, and there we met Elizabeth, the two genius children, shrieking, terrified for seeing us.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy whether they weren't. Maybe they were happy that we were gone. I don't know.
Yeah.
But otherwise, eventually everything calmed down, and we had a nice, not a bad time in Salisbury. And the only other thing that I have to tell you about is, of course, is that very impressive person that we knew there was the Gelfand. Dr. Gelfand, who had been a physician at the Harare hospital.
Hold it, Mom.
Okay,
We're recording.
Oh, okay, when you're finished.
so maybe we can go. I could tell you more about that later. Right now, maybe it's enough. Here.
Well, no, you could just say one thing about Gelfand. What was
Well, I could
why was he
finish with
impressive?
Gelfand. What?
Why was he impressive? What was impressive about him?
He was a great physician
Yeah.
with terrific ability to communicate with the native witch doctors.
Oh, okay.
And he was a main doctor at the Salisbury Native Hospital. I think background was trained in South Africa, or certainly part, but he wrote classical book about the contribution of the colonies to the native culture, or general, in every possible way, particularly in health. And I have a couple of them which are here, and they were very nice people, and they invited us every other day practically for dinner, he and his wife. And of course the story about the dinner is simple. I mean, they had a very nice dinner, and then everybody went out to the backyard, the men only. Which was, the backyard was sort of like they used to have in Europe, in Germany, das Herrenzimmer, where the men went into a special part of the room to smoke cigars and so on. And here we went out, and what all the men did outside in that yard was urinate all over the grass. At which point, and I found that particularly peculiar,
Yeah.
but was informed. There was not enough nitrogen in the soils.
Yeah.
And this was one way in which contributed something, I suppose, in return for your meal. And so, that was a very nice, nice person. I mean, his contribution was the native population, both Shona and the Bele and a number of other tribes, was the witch doctor. Now, witch doctor, what we call witch doctor, was actually a person to identify the witch that attacks you, that causes your disease.
I see.
In other words, he was not a
witch.
He himself, but he was actually the guy who coped with witches.
I see.
It's interesting. One of the famous things is, they went to where you lived and said you had this problem, and he went to some road crossing and he made a thing there, a sign, which road, and then he made some hocus pocus and said it comes from this direction, and the witch lives over there. And so then they probably went over there and they identified the witch, and they said, if you don't stop doing this, we charge you something. And she said, or he or she said, we didn't do that. It led to all kinds of things, and eventually, whatever the guy had, this pass was. So what Gelfand knew is that most of the time this is a lot of nonsense.
Yeah.
But he says, I will only accept people in Harare Hospital if you bring me a slip
From the witch doctor.
from the witch doctor that he had examined to you and does not oppose me doing something.
I see.
And he had talked to those witch doctors. They said, of course, why? I mean, if we can't do it, why not? So he had various
Yeah, he avoided the fight.
good relations with them. And as a result of that, he learned an awful lot about native medicine, native thinking about disease or health or this or that. And these witch doctors, the Nanga they were called, he wrote, I think, the classical book about the native medicine in southern Rhodesia, at least. He was a alert person. He was extremely smart and interested, and did not feel sort of superior to the native, which they realized.
Yeah.
Because of many of the earlier physicians, they said, "Oh, with that nonsense, go away!
Yeah.
I mean, you stupid people."
Yeah.
So that was his his daughter. Unfortunately, eventually, I don't know what happened after Salisbury became Harare, Southern Rhodesia became Zimbabwe, all these kinds of terrible whites left. The Judys had died, except for their daughter and son. The son has gone to England. Daughter remained, and she retained the house. As far as I know, she's still there.
Okay.
In Southern Rhodesia.
So things didn't
Zimbabwe.
turn out. Yeah. Okay.
So that's it. And what was I going to say? Oh yes. So Mr. Gelfand's daughter at some he sent her. She came to this country, and in this country, she actually married a guy called, his name's a philosopher, was his last name. I think also of South African or some Rhodesian background in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happened there, I am not that sure. I have to ask Rael. I think she died in a car accident. And I'm not sure. I think he did too. I can't tell. It's must be a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And what happened to Dr. Gelfand himself and I think he probably would have stayed in Harare Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't know. We lost
contact.
But we had one other person we knew, which is interesting, which is a local pediatrician who examined Gideon and Memo at some point. And this guy, I think years later, came to the United States and at one point visited us and checked on us. I'm not that sure exactly.
Okay.
I don't remember his name. It's just interesting. His names is the first thing that I lose.
Yeah.
So there, what's your name?
All right, I'll stop it. Let's see, where's the mouse?